moving on to the defensive side of the ball now. There was definitely a ton of hype, especially on the defensive line, that secondary. And I'll say the secondary, man, how many, just like with the receivers dropping catches, I mean, how many interceptions they drop? I lost count, man. I don't know about you, but man, holy cow. I kept thinking that would come back to bite Penn State. Thankfully, it didn't. Got to say the pass rush was kind of disappointing, although, to your credit, Chop Robinson came up with a huge sack to end the game. But, part of it, I guess, is maybe that we talked about it before we hit record, but Aiden O'Connell, that Purdue passing attack, they're all about, you get rid of that ball as quickly as you can, like within, like a split second. Like they don't drop back 5 steps, wait 3 to 4 seconds to find somebody. I mean, it's just, probably one read throw. So that, and of course, when you have a linebacking core that's clearly was a weak link tonight. I mean, Curtis Jacobs was probably the only starter out there I felt any real confidence in. And, and Abdul Carter coming in too, unfortunately, was played like one play maybe, and then got called for a real BS targeting, with frankly one of the worst targeting calls I've ever seen. He was simply just going to try to recover a fumble. He went and he ended up his helmet ended up hitting a Purdue player's already in the ground, his helmet. But if you look at the replay, clearly he's trying to dive for the ball. He was going with his shoulder, and his helmet just happens to collide. I thought they were gonna not call it targeting, but just that still baffles me. And again, I thought and that actually ended up leading to Purdue scored a touchdown out of that. So it kind of affected momentum for the moment there. But the defense as a whole, it seemed at times it just seemed disappointing. But then again, maybe having Purdue as your first opponent wasn't ideal for a new coordinator. But on the other hand, you've also mentioned this as well. And you can get into this, I suppose, but that D line, as talented as they are, it was pretty rusty.
Yeah, the defensive line, you look at PJ Mustafer, had not played since October of last year. Adisa Isaac had not played since 2020. Chop Robinson, you mentioned with the sack end of the game. This was his first career game as a full-time hand of the dirt defensive end. Hakeem Beamon had not played since 2020. I think this defensive line in the long term is not just going to be okay. I think this defense line will be really, really damn good. I think it'll be a strength of the team when it's all said and done. But I think it will take time to get there. You had guys who we mentioned not played a lot of football in the last year, sometimes longer. They're going to be rusty. And I'm not worried about the defensive line. I'm not worried about the secondary. I think for the most part, Penn State's defense was okay tonight. They gave up 31 points. Well, 7 of them came off a pick six. You mentioned the Abdul Carter targeting, which was just a horrible call. And I said this on Twitter at the time. I'm not trying to sound like some breathing knuckle dragger, but man, if you don't want kids to be physical and fast and violent to the football, go ref soccer, go ref ping pong. Football, it's a physical, violent sport. The whistle was never blown. For all Abdul Carter known, that could have been a fumble. He led with his shoulder. He hit the Purdue player in the shoulder, and he was playing the ball. That being called targeting was just complete BS, in my opinion. It's just horrible call, and just I don't know. Like I said, if you're an official and you don't want to officiate a game where kids are gonna be fast and violent to the ball, go officiate soccer, go officiate ping pong, go find something else to do with your time, because football it's a violent sport. It is what it is. But anyway, I digress. I do think that linebacker depth is a concern. We saw tonight that series where Curtis Jacobs got knocked out and Abdul Carter was not available to come in for him. I don't think it's a coincidence Purdue went out and scored. I also thought it was cool to see when Jacobs was leaving the field, Who's the first player to come out and greet him? Abdul Carter. I think Abdul Carter has a very, very bright future at Penn State. When you're a linebacker at Penn State and they give you number 11, when they give you the sticks, you got a bright future. So I think Carter in the long run will be a very good player for Penn State. But yeah, I think the defense all in all played well. For the most part, when Manny Diaz and his group needed to get a stop, they did. And one thing with Manny Diaz, I will say, is when you see a defense as aggressive as Manny Diaz, you're going to get beat for big plays from time to time, but the turnovers offset that. Look, right before halftime, Purdue hits a big play. They're in scoring position. What happens next? Zakee Wheatley forces a fumble. Joey Porter Jr. recovers. Penn State goes down and scores. We saw the ability for that. We saw the ability for Penn State to get stops when they need to. I still think Manny Diaz will be just fine as defense coordinator. And I think one thing that gets overlooked in this game also with the defense, other than C.J. Stroud, Aiden O'Connell might be the best quarterback they play all season. This was a very good quarterback. And to tie back to Ohio State, outside of Ryan Day, Jeff Braun might be the best play caller they play all season. This is a very good Purdue offense. This is a Purdue offense that's going to hang points on most teams. So the fact Penn State held them to 24 points offensively when we take away the pick six, and of those 24, you have 3 points came off of a dropped, what should have been pick six by Joey Porter Jr., and 7 that came off of just the horrible targeting call in Abdul Carter. There's definitely a timeline out there, where Joey Porter Jr. holds in that pick six and where Abdul Carter's not called for targeting, and Purdue scores like 17 points tonight. So I think all in all, the defense played well. And like you mentioned, Tim, we talked about this before we came on the air. The Purdue offense, it's quick hit stuff. Like, you have the best pass rush in the country. If you have a quarterback who's one or two step drop and dumps the ball off, you're not going to get sacked. It's just not going to happen. The one Purdue had to drop back and pass the ball. Penn State's defense got pressure. We talked about the Chop Robinson sack, but I think maybe an even bigger play than that. On Purdue's penultimate possession, we saw Aiden O'Connell on first down on that drive get sacked by Jonathan Sutherland for a loss of 7. That may have been as big a play of anything, because that put Purdue way behind the sticks, put them in a position where they had to punt the ball. Penn State, to their credit, got the ball. Sean Clifford marched right down the field, as we talked about, and scored. So I do think Penn State's defense tonight, they had some hiccups, as you would expect for game one of a defensive coordinator going up against a good offense. But ultimately, when they had to get stops, they did. And I have no problems with the way the Penn State defense played tonight. I still think Manny Diaz will be just fine. And yeah, I think Manny Diaz is a good defense coordinator, and I think they'll be okay. You know, this is a team that they faced a very good offense. And like I said, when they had to get stops, they did. And that's what matters. You can give up points in between, but when you need a stop to swing momentum, when you need a stop to get the ball back to take the lead, we need to stop to hold your lead, and you can get those stops. Ultimately, that's what matters for a defense.
Kind of brings us to a comment here. How you feel about Manny's scheme now, boys? Get ready to absolutely hate the void zone blitz. Never heard of a void zone blitz. But, yeah, I mean, I guess, jury's still out, but, they did come up when they absolutely had to. They came up with stops. They came up with, especially in that final drive, they came up with a sack to end the game. They broke up some passes. I just wish they, Joey Porter Jr. or Keaton Ellis had come down with an interception, especially Keaton Ellis, because that was on the final drive. Could have just ended it right there. But, again, it's water under the bridge because Penn State won anyway. So